To start with, I thought I'll come and stand here right in the middle of this glass of water because you've got to go to the gym quite a bit to go and stand behind a podium and still look impressive. And I haven't. Also, I've been trying to wonder what this glass of water is, and I finally realized it's about this half full and half empty, and it's about optimism. Unfortunately, because I think all of us are artists, we've only been looking at it as half full throughout, which is my first point, which is that all artists are optimistic. To request the audience to start smiling a little more. We are talking about music, dance, and storytelling. It's not as serious as 9% versus 12% growth. Secondly, it's perfectly all right to smile and laugh, even though some of the things that we're saying are serious. Ultimately, I think the whole idea is that you enjoy what you're doing. Sorry to be irreverent, and also sorry to come and stand in front of Vishy. This is the first time I've heard him sing, and I have to say he's a fantastic musician. Of course, he and I have sat together in studios where he's taught me talams. I noticed one other thing. Srinidhi is a trained medical doctor and is also a Bharatanatyam artist. Vishy is an engineer who can play the mridangam, and now I've learned that he can sing. I got my PhD in marketing, forgive me for it. Despite that, I've become a classical musician. So I think something is inherently wrong with most musicians today, is that whether we like it or not, we are multidisciplinary. And we like to attribute that to our artistic side, but maybe neurological evidence will back up the fact that mostly a training in the arts enables you to actually understand and probably get immersed in other fields as well. Art has that effect in you, and I think it's extremely important to remember that. Which is why I think more than talk about our process and what we've done, I think one of the big thrusts I want to have is why is it important to have the creative industries as part of these seminars, is that an education in the creative arts and an education in art, music, culture, whatever it is about this country is extremely important. It's, at one point, it's an industry, it's definitely something that can enter the for-profit space very nicely, but more importantly, it needs to be done. A simple example, I was actually addressing school children in Tiruvarur. Tiruvarur, as you know, is the birthplace for Carnatic music. School children there. Have you heard of the artistic trinity? People are very quiet. As I ask again, the artistic trinity, I said, oh, Namita, Nayantara, Shreya Saran. Not that Namita, Nayantara and Shreya Saran are not artistic trinity, but that at Tiruvarur you start wondering what the hell is going on with the state of the world, right? And Tyagaraja should not become the first name of a locality in Madras. It is the name of a composer, and this education is completely lost out. And it's not as though music is not big business. It's not as though entertainment is not big business. Ask the corporate sponsors of most artistic performances, they'll tell you it's very big business. And artists are living very well. And all of us are multidisciplinary, not because we couldn't make enough money, but because we end up liking what we do. The most important things that we felt with this form, okay, what does the piano have to do with Carnatic music? Absolutely nothing. But the reason that it was brought in is because it was my form of expression, and both of us started working together. The piano, first of all, is not a Western instrument. It's an Indian instrument. And I'm not saying this because all of us like to think that everything that is good is Indian. The piano originated in the form of an instrument called the santoor, which everybody knows is Kashmiri. Santoor traveled westwards. In Persia, it's also called the santoor or the santor. Went even more westwards, became something called the sitar, which combined with another instrument that has found its presence in this part of the world called the yar, the harp, and combined itself to make the harpsichord and finally became the piano. So it's actually come from here and then come back to us. Unfortunately, for most of us, the only introduction to the piano was seeing Sivaji Ganeshan drum on it dramatically in movies, and otherwise for Saroja Devi to drape herself over it as she sang songs. It's actually a classical instrument. I mean, in all instruments, the other thing is that whether an instrument cannot be classified into classical versus non-classical versus light versus so on, it's how you decide to use it. To us, our process has been that this Namita, Nayantara, Shreya Saran nexus has to be broken somehow. Not by using Nakiran, but somehow to create a genre of music or to try and present our music in a way that would start appealing to the generation which is very obsessed that, does your BlackBerry have Facebook also? Oh, no. Oh, performance is going on. Okay. How long? And that has to go. Why don't you attend a Carnatic music performance? It's 2.5 hours. Machi, I can't do that. Right? This nexus had to be broken. And how do we do it? The piano, again, orally, audio-visually, 95% of the world is used to the oral sensibility of a piano, so it seems to be a very obvious thing to do. Why would a boy who, like Sendil Chengarayan, went to Vivekananda College, decide to play the piano? That's the whole point of the creative industry, is that you can break barriers. Right? I think it's very important that our audiences, and one of the things that Gurucharan and I always discuss is that let's focus on people who are 20 years old, because they're going to be listening to our music for the next 50 years. More importantly than the people who are 70, not that they are not important. Sorry. And if the 20-year-old wants to come in and say that the artistic trinity is indeed Dikshita, Tyagaraja and Shama Shastri, for those of you who didn't know that, instead of Namita, Nayantara and Shreya Saran, I think it's extremely important that we reach them with instrumentation, which reach them with an arrangement and reach them with a musical idea that's purely Indian, created by two Indians, but who are also part of that generation. I can tell you from experience that Sikil Gurucharan is much more at home with gadgets, with video games, with the Xbox and the GameCube, which you don't expect a Carnatic musician to be carrying. But that is our generation. That seems to be what speaks for them. Throughout this audience and on this panel, I'm surrounded by people who are doing exactly what we've done, which is our culture, our tradition is like a painting. What you need to give to it is a different frame. What is the purpose of the frame? The purpose of the frame is to make sure that the painting hangs well. The purpose of the frame is not to become the painting itself, right? So for instance, it's not that Pranab Mukherjee and his rendering of the budget was uninteresting, but when CNBC presents it, it becomes a little more interesting. It's a frame, it's creativity. It's not that Indian art is something new, but Indian art as an industry and as a business started coming to life, and Geeta Mehra, I'm sure, will speak about much more in her session. It's not that we haven't had Indian art for the last 2,000 years. It's just that people haven't understood it as an investment, as something that can be developed, as something that can have an educational emphasis to it. And as for instance, you go to a school and you say, who is M.F. Hussain? They'll say, brother of A.R. Rahman. It's shocking. Let's not even ask them who Reza is. I think it'll be scary, right? For instance, you go to schools and you say, okay, this I did, okay, at one of the music institutions started in Chennai, name a Carnatic musician you know. Nobody raises any hands. And I looked at one probable candidate and I said, do you know? Okay, M.S. Subbulakshmi. I said, living. She's not living? And this is somebody coming out of a music institution. How do we correct this? Again, once and again, access. Access is extremely important. If you have to appeal to a generation that is Facebook obsessed, LinkedIn obsessed, or whatever obsessed, you have to reach them with instrumentation, with arrangement, frame the painting in a way that the frame sits well on their walls. We cannot frame it exactly the same way it was framed 250 years ago, because let's face it, 250 years ago you didn't have a CII conference where a Tambram from Chennai who plays the piano was talking to you about creativity, right? If the way we think and the way we speak and the way we act has changed, although our Indianness has not changed, similarly, so should our music. We are not saying Carnatic music should change, but perhaps new ways of presenting them, new ways of looking at it is probably a good idea to go if you need to reach that generation and keep the continuity alive. Before that turns into red, I will just say that one of my very, very good anthropologist friends defined tradition as a living continuity. Tradition is not something that is dead and kept inside an ever silver box in your kitchen. Right? Tradition is something that is part of who we all are. There is a certain tradition that we maintain. It's just that its presentation and its articulation has changed a little bit. We need to understand that. So our method of presenting Carnatic music has merely changed the articulation of something that's already there. You can call it old wine in a probably interesting new bottle. I'll end with a story. And this is a story for those who come to my performances who know the story very well. Is that a sign that I'm speaking too much? No, it's not. There's a story about a little boy who walks up to his father and says, I want to become the wisest man in the world. And so the father looks at him and says, okay, I'll take you to somebody who can tell you that. And he takes him to a businessman. So the boy looks at the father and says, I said wisest man. The father says, yes, this is the wisest man. The boy was expecting a sadhu or a sant or a professor at least, or even a musician, but instead he takes him to a businessman. The businessman looks at the boy and says, you take this spoon. In this spoon, there is 1 drop of oil. Walk around the building. When you come back, the oil in your spoon should be absolutely intact. So the boy takes the spoon, walks around the building, and comes back, shows the man the spoon, the oil is there. So the businessman looks at the boy and he says, on the west side of the building, there was a beautiful library with ancient manuscripts and books. Did you see it? The boy says, no. He says, on the north side of the building was a beautiful zoo with all kinds of strange, exotic creatures of paradise. Did you see it? And the boy says, no. He says, on the east side, Namita was doing a dance. Did you see that? The boy says, no. So the man says, what were you doing? He said, you were the one who said, keep your eye on the oil in the spoon. How am I going to enjoy all of these things? So the man says, okay, take the spoon, take the oil, walk around the block again. So the boy does that. So this time he takes a long time, enjoys everything around the building and comes back. And he comes back in a state of great excitement. He says, oh, I saw this, I saw the books, I saw this person dancing. This was fantastic. So the man says, where's the oil in the spoon? The boy looks at the spoon, the oil is gone. So the businessman says, this is the wisdom of the world. Never forget who you are. That is the oil in the spoon. That is our Carnatic music, that is our Bharatanatyam, that is everything that we stand for as an Indian aesthetic. But doesn't mean that you can't take in what the world has to offer to you and somehow integrate it while still keeping your focus on what's in the spoon. And that, to me, is the wisdom that we want to bring through our art. That has been our process. We aren't certainly masters at it, but we are trying in our own way to bring the Facebook audience. And I'm very happy to say that I think most of our fans are on Facebook. And we keep getting discussed on Facebook. In creativity templates, I mean, all of you have gone through Blue Ocean strategies and creativity templates and so on, but in creativity templates, there's one template which, one of the things that have been recommended is, there is an additive template in which you just take an existing form of business, but you add a new form to it. There is a replacement technique when you completely change the way you operate, and there's several such ideas. What we have followed is additive and subtractive. What we brought in is the piano, but what we've taken out is the violin and the mridangam. And in doing so, it's not in any way to insult or to take away from what already exists beautifully, but as I said, once again, I'll return to the beautiful painting that is Sikil Gurucharan's voice, to which the frame of the piano hopefully helps the painting of our music sit well on the walls of the Facebook generation. And I've gone to red, so I'll stop.